And thanks, Mila, for setting us up today. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening around the world. My name's Doug Brunke. I'm the founder and CEO of Global Chamber. This is our Foreign Direct Investment FDI Forum conversation that happens weekly. It's a conversation that's the confluence of economic development, business, and commercial real estate. And that's where deals happen. And so we know that happens because everybody that's in commercial real estate figures out that you've got to be connected to certain people so you can get referrals and that you can do some deals. We're going to talk a little bit about New York City today, and we've got some great speakers. So stay tuned. I'd like to introduce our hosts here today, Jim Huang and Ellen Su. Both are members of Global Chamber, spectacular members of Global Chamber. Ellen kicked off Global Chamber Vancouver last October. I can't believe it's coming up on a year that it's been already. She is so well connected in British Columbia. Unbelievable. She knows everybody. And a lot of that is because she cares and she gives and she is so giving. I know you've got the Philippine Canada event that's coming up. Would love to hear more about that. Hopefully we haven't missed that. And you've just always got some great things coming up, including some things we're planning for Global Chamber Vancouver in the coming months. And Jim Huang, in addition to being a longtime member of Global Chamber, he's officially on two different advisory boards for us. One, the Global Chamber Los Angeles one, and I think that still makes sense. Hopefully it does. I know you're coming down to LA for both our summer social on the 26th and the Korea conference on the 28th. And then Jim is also part of our Global Council, which is our global board led by Dr. Sanjeev Kagram and Francis Tesmer. Jim, Ellen, thank you for your leadership. We've got a couple great speakers today. What would you like to do to kick us off?
I would just want to say a couple words is you got to know the world, but more importantly, you got to really know people. That's what kept me in the career, the relationships, ups and downs of market cycles, but the relationships still hold. It's just sometimes we just move seats and move around. But the good thing is there's always that trust, the friendship. So uh, now that we can do it virtually to hopefully break bread and see people in New York, I'm usually there once a quarter. So looking forward to meeting everyone, looking forward to meeting the presenters and speakers. But this is a way, Doug, with Global Chamber, your vision of getting to know the world. And I've made so many great contacts everywhere I travel. So a lot of fun being part of this group.
Thank you, Doug, for the introduction. And I just want to welcome everybody to our forum today. And I think we have a lot of exciting guest speakers that will be sharing with us information about New York. Of course, Doug had mentioned there's a few events I would like to share with everybody. I'm based in Vancouver, Canada. So on August 21st, there's a Trade Recognition Award for BC Yukon Northwest Territory. This event is actually hosted by the Philippine Canada Trade Council in cooperation with Philippine Consul General of the Philippine International Trade Office. And basically, this is the first Philippine Trade Recognition Award for the province of BC Yukon Northwest Territory. And this event will be taking place on August 21st in Terminal City Club. And it's honoring organization and business that have shown excellence in promoting trade with Philippines. So if you or anybody that's based in Vancouver that's interested in attending and learning more about trade between Canada and also Philippines, please pass the registration information to them. I'll put the information in the chat later. And the second event I mentioned, I would like to invite people is called Work Tech 26, which is going to take place in Toronto on September 17th. And this is a really great event where you learn about the future of work and workspace, where a lot of the top commercial real estate professionals and also top designers will be there talking about what the future of workplace is going to be look like. In not basically a lot of the new design that a lot of people haven't even thought of. They've already started testing it on some of the prototype and also some of the new headquarter office and a lot of corporate office. And the third event I want to share with everybody is the FIOPSI International Trade mission to Taiwan. So basically, this is the first time we have a female president, Lily Chen. She is the female president for FIOPSI International, and she's welcoming everybody who's interested in learning more about Taiwan and also learning more about investing in Taiwan. The title of the event is called The New Urban Future Beyond Technology Toward Humanity. So there will be a lot of speakers talking about technologies that's being used in the real estate sector and also what's happening in the commercial real estate in Taiwan. So all three of those events, I'll put in the chat. So if you know anybody that's in Vancouver, Toronto, or even in Taiwan, or who are interested in attending any of these events, the registration link is in there. And of course, there are some discount registration link that included in the link too, in the chat. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you, Ellen. We were talking about Phoenix earlier, and certainly the TSMC investment in Phoenix is monumental. The first $165 billion that were invested by TSMC was just upped by another 100 million a couple weeks ago, the announcement. And it's not just TSMC investing, but it's the entire supply chain. So the area is fundamentally changing, and the connection with Taiwan is so significant. Over the last couple months, for the first time, the trade between the U.S. and Taiwan exceeded that of the U.S. and China. So very important, lots going on there, and we'll be talking about both China and Taiwan in the coming weeks. China next week and Taiwan in 2 weeks.
Well, can I add? I just had a call with Taiwan last night, and we were bringing funds just like Japan. Taiwan's interest rate, even if they raise it a little, it's 2%, and 8% is huge. We're already talking about people refining, pulling equity out, doing the arbitrage, building funds, and we were talking CPAs, international fund managers, people setting it up because of the tax advantage. And you're right, focusing, they're just maybe like Japan, taking money out at their lower interest rates to redeploy it in America. So especially in certain pockets. So there is a credible opportunity, and a lot of things you connect the dots by these meetings. Just wanted to add that. So showing up, listening, hearing Taiwan, I think is important. Not as big as the Japanese market, but it's still a very significant market. And those that put in relationships, Doug, could really even make more. But because of what all this is going on in Phoenix, more and more money, it's an easier sell, is what I'm saying. But there is money trying to move to the U.S. because of the arbitrage of the interest rates.
That makes sense.
That's right. I think.
Is anybody concerned about the yen at the moment? Have you been hearing? What's your take on that? I'm just curious.
They're holding it together, right?
Yeah, but they intervened and it only held up for like 2 days.
Yeah, they got to keep doing it so it's not a collapse. But we've known it's a deleveraging, slowly unwind. So at least if it's a more organized process, that's the thing, right? Because it's just holding it together, I would say, from what I'm seeing. But some people are rushing to the door, unwinding, deleveraging, and moving it. And there's not enough big enough market to prop it up. So it is going to be large, like U.S. countries and others, to just kind of hold it and make it organized. It's just too big of a market. You know what I mean? If they go, it's going to affect a lot of us, especially the assets, hard assets right now. We were talking about getting Japanese money over here, and it's just a different game right now. So I'll inform people more after we have some more calls with Japan.
Yeah, we should do some on that. The foreign direct investment from Japan has been so significant. It's created two economies. One is their investments overseas, and then the Japanese economy, which has been really struggling. So thank you for bringing that up. We'll make sure that we get that into the mix. I'd like to introduce our speakers today. Justin Culta will be the key speaker. He's a real estate attorney with Sabre. on Sabre LLC, Sabre Law. I'm from New York, and I laugh when people say that the US is comprised of 14 regions that have different cultures. Because being from New York, I can pick 14 just in the tri-state area. You've got, Long Island. You've got the boroughs have their own characters. Jersey is not just northern Jersey, but southern Jersey, and then Jersey, kind of Camden, Cherry Hill. You've got kind of a different thing going on there. You've got Connecticut, and you've got both the Yankee side of it and the Red Sox side of it. And upstate New York, you've got Westchester, which is its own thing. And then upstate is probably different things. So 14, I think we could find 14 just in the tri-state area. What's really kind of cool about the area is that it's had a renaissance. As an older fellow and growing up in the 1970s in New York, it was dead. And I very vividly remember driving as a kid on Merrick Boulevard in Queens, and my parents having to drive around the potholes that were forming because the city had run out of money, and it was dire. I was at a lunch yesterday where we were talking about Queens today, and Queens, there's some rough areas. Back in those days, every part of Queens was rough. It was brutal, and I delivered auto parts for my grandfather's machine shop. And I don't know how he allowed me to do that, but I was doing in some tough neighborhoods in those days. And they, in fact, started putting bars on the buildings, first the windows and then the doors, and of course the skylight and the roof. And in his business, they actually drove through the cinder block building to get to the products inside. So it was a tough neighborhood. Things changed from the 70s and 80s, and there's been an amazing renaissance for the city. Things are a little bit tough now, and I'm sure we're going to hear a little bit about that. Not nearly as tough as what it was back in those days. The renaissance has been spectacular. And so, Justin, thank you for sharing with us what those attracting points are for the New York, New Jersey market. And thankfully, you guys have your finger on what's going on, what's hot, what the opportunities are. And so I look forward to learning from you today. Thank you for taking the time.
Sure thing. Tim, did you want to kick us off and then I'll take over?
Yeah, just real quick, Justin is the subject matter expert here, but I just want to introduce myself quickly. My name is Tim Lau. I'm the Director of Business Development over at Sabre, and Justin will tell you a little bit more about our firm. I just wanted to thank everybody. I think we've been members of the Global Chamber for about 2 years now. We're active in the New York chapter that's hosted monthly at CBIZ Midtown, as well as down in Puerto Rico. I see Cesar's on the call here. That's how we kind of got involved originally down in Puerto Rico, but it's been a great experience working with everybody in the Global Chamber. Hope to continue to do so. But I'll kick it to Justin. He's the real estate attorney who has all the information, but I just wanted to say hello and thank you to everyone for joining us.
Okay, thanks, Tim. And good morning, everybody. Very excited to present today. Before I get into us and kick things off, I just want to highlight two things from Doug and Jim and Ellen. 14 is just way too small a number as far as like interesting or discrete areas. For example, my little brother is a director at KPMG in Manhattan, and you can't get him to leave his own like 2-block neighborhood. And we'll talk about it a little bit. That sort of local flavor that is as granular at like the street level in both New York and New Jersey is actually bears quite a bit on how approvals are obtained and how you need to approach, commercial real estate and, public sentiment and political, wind shifting and things like that. And then the second thing is, just following up on what Jim and Ellen said is, absolutely, deals, nothing gets done in a vacuum, right? It's who but it's more nuanced than that. It really takes a dedicated team of individuals to get things done, both from personalities, but also just expertise. And a network is always going to produce a better result than an individual acting on their own. And, to that end, organizations and seminars like today are worth their weight in gold. And, what we'll talk about in a little bit is, for sure, experience, an ounce of experience, I think the saying is often worth more than volumes of logic. Having lived through these things and being able to draw on people that have the experience is just crucial in getting these things done. So, like Doug said, what are we talking about today? We're going to talk about, the New York, New Jersey markets, where all the attraction is, and what's happening, how deals are structured, and if you're a lender or an investor, what should you be concerned about? So the thing that has been on everybody's mind, whether you own land or you have money that you're looking to invest in any given project, is data centers. And why is that? We live in a world where AI is, more or less already integrated. It's not coming; it's already here. So as commerce shifts, and as we become increasingly digital, there's still a physical need, even though there's sort of a digital component to everything. A couple of years ago, it was warehousing with the pandemic, where e-commerce exploded, and the way a lot of purchasing is done nowadays is people click a button and something shows up on their doorstep within a day, sometimes sooner now. That's only possible if there's a robust networking and sort of logistics network that exists within your own environments. But whenever that happens, it brings unique challenges that often attract the eye of two important blocks of political forces. One is the government itself, and the other one is neighbors. So AI, like I said, even though it's digital, it's already here. It has a physical component that requires the commercial real estate toolbox to crack the nut. So the data center is, just briefly, it's a physical site that stores servers, and it's not just AI processing thing, but it's web-based clouds, things like that are increasingly just indispensable to how our economy and business runs right now. But they have their own challenges. They have enormous power demands, and they also have enormous cooling demands. They're also sensitive to location. They, like a warehouse, you want to put it near a seaport or a railway line if available. The closer you are to a power utility or an urban area, the better for your AI or your data center. But along with that, you have disproportionate power demands on one given site that drives up rates, which leaves people that aren't drawing as much power forced with higher rates. They're paying more than they should because one guy's drawing down more. The other thing is noise. Not so much traffic with these sites, but things that you typically see in any commercial real estate development. So let's talk about New York. New York, as far as I know, at least as of last night, as of this presentation, it's the first state in the country that hit pause, what we call a moratorium. Nothing's moving forward. If you're already vested, you're more or less exempt from what I'm going to talk about. But if you are interested in investing in what's got the most attention on it right now, you should be aware that there is a moratorium on new data centers in New York. So the legislature, the New York legislature, passed a bill that was S-10-642, and that was a one-year pause, permit freeze specifically. Governor Hochul never went forward in signing that one. Instead, she went her own way with Executive Order 62 just this past July, which was her own permit freeze on somewhat different but ultimately similar terms. So that order is actually what's in effect today. The reason why is there was a massive backlog on power requests that was overwhelming the grid, and fears that ordinary ratepayers would be footing the bill for disproportionate power demand. So if you already had your approvals in hand before the pause, not much really changes for you. You're generally fine, but if you didn't, you're stuck within this at least 1 year holding pattern. And I can almost promise you within this year, additional legislation is going to come down and projects are going to look different other than what's already been approved today. On the other side of the Hudson in New Jersey, we don't have an outright pause. We didn't pump the brakes. I'd say we sort of lightly tapped them. I think we're positioning ourselves as the friendlier, we're open for business compatriot to our New York neighbor. So our new law, which has been signed by our Governor Sherrill, that's S731, that makes big data centers, which in the New Jersey side of thing, I think it's anything over a peak demand of 100 megawatts, guarantee that they're going to pay for most of the power that they reserve. And I believe it's an 85% share with a 10-year guarantee. Again, that's aimed at making sure that individual customers aren't left covering the cost for the increased demand on power that will drive up rates. Second bill, which is pending our governor's signature, makes data centers report water and energy use publicly. Remember, it's not just the demand on electricity. You'll have huge cooling requirements. That's going to take both the form of water cooling and air conditioning, which has its own electrical drawdown. And you have to disclose those demands publicly now. So the real friction in New Jersey is local. It's not necessarily the state, is what we're seeing in New York. I can tell you in New Jersey, where we do a lot of development work, you often have to present these things in public, and they get to show up, and it's a night out for a lot of the public. There's a couple towns in particular in New Jersey, one up north, one down south, where they've had to have the cops at the meetings to control public outbursts and things like that. And what we'll talk about in a second, that creates political force against it, and it does, even if you have like a very good legal or regulatory basis for why your project should be approved. Land use, development, real estate, it really is the intersection of law and politics, and getting a deal done or something approved. It's both an art and a science, and sometimes it's more art than it is science. But I think on the regulatory environment with respect to data centers, from the perspective of an investor or a lender, or somebody that's trying to get one of these projects done, fully financed site, you're still subject to a moratorium or a permit freeze and changes in legislation. How you get those done, it's a little more granular than I think what today's topic should be. But that risk is out there, and you should see, and you should structure, which is what our next stop is going to be, the deal to hedge against these risks. So how do you do that? Approvals, certainly in this market, are far less predictable than they used to be. And I can tell you that every year it's been getting more and more difficult on the regulatory and approval environment. When the buyer agrees to buy, only if the project's approved, or the lender's only going, or an investor or a lender is only going to commit the funds after the project is vested and entitled and capable of being constructed. How do you negotiate around that to make sure that all these risks are hedged? The tools that work aren't necessarily specific just to data centers generally. I mean, this works for commercial, for office, industrial, multifamily, retail. What does it mean to have your approvals? I mean, you want to be as broad as possible. Market typically does not include construction permits, but it will definitely include everything pretty much up to the point that you're entitled to pull your construction permits. You're going to want adequate time to get the project approved and entitled. You used to see 12 months. You're often seeing 18 months as the initial period, with additional 6-month extensions that'll take you up to 24 months. That gives often the seller assurance that they're not locking their property up indefinitely, and the buyer's not just allowed to take forever. But it also addresses the reality that approvals are just taking longer and longer, and a full 2-month period is certainly not unheard of anymore. Where deals go wrong, it's I should say it's where the typical pitfalls. What happens? For example, in the world of data centers,
my phone is.
Nope. Okay. So you often see, with any development deal is, the buyer gets hit with conditions on their approval that ultimately make the project not feasible. Obviously, you're not going to commit funds to a project that's, financially not capable of being done. For example, we have in New Jersey an 85% power split with a commitment for 10 years. That's not really something that can be negotiated around, in sort of a side agreement. That is a legal reality. It's something that needs to be priced in, to whatever's being underwritten. The ability to, what happens if you get denied, even though you were fully vested? Do you have the option to appeal it? Does the seller want to go along with that? And clarity on where the deposit goes in the event that things are done. You'll often see buyers have to pay for their extensions so that the seller has his or her carry costs covered. Things like that. So, for a lender or investor, you want to make sure that we're generally looking at this from a buyer or development side. Do you have adequate time? Are you committed to funding or closing when you have what you think are an appropriate amount of entitlements, such that the project's going to go forward without the need for additional risk of a denial? And ultimately, what does the timeline look? And I can tell you from having done these deals, and this is a good segue into our third topic, is it's good to have a lot of time, but it's bad to have a lot of time too sometimes, because things don't always stay the same. We live in the law changes slowly, but politics don't. And the law follows politics. It's a reactionary business. So you have to deal with the political side up front before you can even get into the law. So in New Jersey, which is what we're going to talk about for this one, there's generally two ways of getting things done. You have garden variety development, where you put together an application for a project, you present it, and you hope to get your approval. By the time you present it, it's the first time anybody's ever seen or heard of it. Everybody's taking a crack at it first instance. That used to be how a lot of things were done. We also have a law in the books called our redevelopment laws, local housing and redevelopment law. In that one, you're involved with getting a project done with the municipality. It's a tool essentially that allows the municipality to deem certain properties blighted, which doesn't necessarily mean completely run down, not abandoned. There's a number of statutory factors that you need to find. But the real attractiveness of it is it comes with certain incentives in getting the property rehabilitated. You get tax breaks, what we call our pilot, our payment in lieu of tax program. You get streamlined approvals and leverage over holdout parcels. The government is allowed to exercise eminent domain powers in the context of redevelopment that it doesn't have with respect to garden variety development. And the way it works, it's almost the opposite of how development works. On the other side of the coin, you work with the town behind closed doors, basically, to come up with a zoning scheme for your project that then gets adopted as the legal ordinance that governs in it, and then you go get your approval. So by the time you're getting your approval in front of the public, you've got a zoning scheme that's more or less been bespoke fit for the project that you have. So it's a very powerful tool in getting projects done, and it doesn't. This is everything. This is multifamily. This is industrial, commercial. It's not just cabin to certain uses. But like I said, having a lot of time is itself a risk. We've seen this in certain projects that were popular at the time but became unpopular. For you talk about market shifts. New Jersey, it was very popular. There was a big market demand for mixed use housing, where you had commercial real estate on the bottom, the coffee shop, the Wegmans, the things like that, with a number of multifamily units on top. Towns loved it because they got the ratables on the bottom, then they got their affordable housing components with the number of units on top, and these always took the form of luxury rentals. I could tell you that just from having conversations with the municipalities, there's a lot of fatigue on the luxury rental market right now, and they've been hearing, that we have affordability issues, certainly in this area right now. I can tell you that there was one project that started out as loving open arms that, we were going to have this multifamily unit, and they said, look, we're saturated with rentals. We want to have paths for ownership. We loved your project, but we'd love it even more, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, if you converted it to condos that were ultimately for sale. So what does that mean, right? So things change when you're in the middle of your approvals process, whether you're vested or not. It's something you still need to contend with. New council or mayor comes in post-election. We have some coming up right now where their priorities shift. You've either got a brand new slate of people that weren't in favor of your project that are now holding all the the power, or the political sentiment no longer wants the development that you're putting up or the form of it. Priority shift. The plan gets rewritten after developers already sunk real money into the project. And I'm not even talking about hard costs. I mean, soft costs for any projects are their own sort of beast, right? You can easily sink 6 figures just into the design, getting site plans and architecturals done. So what do you do? We have two general agreements that sort of govern these projects. One's the purchase and sale agreement generally for the parcel. You also have the redevelopment agreement that puts everything that I just talked about in writing with the municipality. And it's a very similar form to what you would otherwise have between two private parties in an arm's length transaction. What approvals mean, how long you have to take to get them, everything that we talked about in point 2. What happens on defaults. I'm litigating one right now. So what goes into that redevelopment agreement, or what goes into your purchase contract with two private parties? Like I said, you want to talk about AI. I mean, it's not something that you can just getting the words right in and of itself isn't enough. Having lived through getting one of these things done and dealing with all the changes and knowing how to negotiate, how to make a project like this have enough breathing room to get over the very difficult regulatory and political line, so that the developer gets what they want, the investors or the lenders are safe enough, if they feel that their money is committed correctly. That's the art that just turning it into really good words alone isn't enough. So the common thread is, the risk isn't so much the law always on these things. It's timing, it's power, both literally, with a data center, and politically. And the deals that survives are the ones with contracts that are built to absorb these sort of delays, shifting priorities, and not just hope to avoid it. I think the bottom line is, make sure you've got a good attorney. Don't just rely on ChatGPT for the contracting in getting these things done. But I think that's more or less the status of the market. Certainly within the New York, New Jersey area, the data centers are where all the eyeballs are. That's generally how they're structured, and that's these shifting priorities and what happens over time. As the law catches up with politics, and what you need to do in order to protect yourself, make sure that your projects and your money are safe. I think that's where we're at, and I'm happy to take questions or answer anything else that might come up out of that.
Justin, geopolitical concerns, is that affecting investment dollars?
Yeah, I mean, it's always going to affect investment dollars, right? So obviously nobody's going to want to plug a bunch of money into something that might not ever be able to be pulled out of the ground. And is there a better vehicle than commercial real estate, or where where all the action is in commercial real estate? There's always this issue, Jim. We going back to warehousing, because it was the last huge thing. We're on the sell side of a deal right now that's contingent on getting a very large. We're talking over 1 million square feet warehousing done, and they're getting a lot of pushback at the municipal level, and they're not closing isn't contingent on getting financing, but I have a call later today, and I can guarantee it's an extension request because they're having issue getting their investors on board. So absolutely.
Yeah. That's just tough, right? When you need more long-term certainty and not every market election cycle.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a great point that the election cycle. So it's not just the entitlement risk. It's not just the bare bones of the project itself that affects the investment. I mean, it's like you just said. I mean, anything political causes markets to react, and that goes all the way down to the dirt, literally. So
Thank you.
I'd like to say something, not exactly a question, but
Yes, Paul.
Portugal, the licensing timing. It's not only an US problem. That is a problem in Portugal. Portugal has been very attractive for foreign investors, foreign capital in whole sectors, the entire sectors of commercial and residential real estate. That's a fact. But from some time now, most of them, particularly those who come for the first time, they already know, they heard somehow that the licensing issues are very, very complicated. The public system, the public administration, they are lousy. So, and it's a national problem, and it is being discussed by the politicians, the mayors, everyone discusses it, and they try to reform, to restructure, but somehow things don't flow well. But the foreigner developers, what they now most of them decided to do is to purchase things that are already licensed and shovel ready, as they say. Okay, and there's a lot of sellers who became professional licensors of their properties, So there's a lot of products that come to the market already ready to build. So that's the good side of the story. And there's a lot of developers also that play a lot with that play. Let's say they choose to develop something and they choose to license other things and sell it, and that becomes very easy to purchase to someone that just wants to come in and just start to build. But of course, that increases the price of the product, but decreases in the end the price of the project, the cost of the project because of the time and the hurdles. And regarding data centers, I think we are better than you there, perhaps, because public administration and the politicians in general, they are all very keen to license data centers. They are open arms with that. Actually, I started to work with a client to build data centers. He has some USA partners and is going to start building. And we're just starting looking for plots and locations. And that's really a huge thing. A lot of requirements, just inside. But municipalities are very open. They run after their own processes to license and to open exceptions to this and that and that and that. Of course, the energy thing is a constraint, but we have something that most European countries don't have. We still have a lot of capacity to build data centers. We produce more energy than we consume. We have alternatives like a lot of wind, a lot of solar. We are one of the most We have the most hours of sun in Europe, for instance. We have a very huge coastline, and everything helps. And for instance, France cannot
Paula,
anymore, for
Paula,
instance. Yeah, okay.
did you have a question wrapped up in
No,
this?
just not a question, just a comment.
Okay,
Hi.
mainly about Portugal. So
Yeah.
I think we gathered that. Have you been to New York?
No, not yet.
No, you need to come. We welcome you.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, but don't invest in data
I
centers
will.
there quite yet.
No, although Doug, just a few points on what you said, Paula. So no, I mean I know just from other prior experience that this isn't like a New York, New Jersey thing. Like you want to talk about Italy, you want to try to get anything done with Italy, you're going to spend years in an archaeology because if you dig there, you're going to find like a potsherd or an arrowhead or something like that, right? And no, so with respect to the dissenters, you always go in with what you want to see get done with the expectation that you're going to come out with a little bit less. Because, and this is the art part, not necessarily the science. In my experience, if it's not something like completely offensive, municipalities are very interested in development. Development is, in some respects, inevitable. It's going to become something. And this is good for them. Development brings jobs. It fills needs that vacant land, which is important in its own right. But you correctly position developable parcels are something that municipalities ultimately want to have done. Like you said, though, you need to cut deals with the public, and sometimes you have to do it on the fly while they're complaining about your project. How you do that again? I mean, like it's hard having to say yes to things where you're being forcefully asked to do something in front of the people that hold the approval power on the fly. Experience again is what dictates. What's where to say yes, where to say no. You can't just say no all the time, otherwise you're not get your approval. Yeah, so it's not unique to Portugal at all. You see that in other countries, you see it here. So like I said, it's getting a deal closed, making sure investor dollars are protected. It's a living, breathing thing that the attorney's often the quarterback on these projects and making sure that they get done and contracted correctly. So we see similar things here, and there's traditional fault lines and toolboxes that you use to sort of solve a lot of the problems that you highlighted.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just
definitely in all projects, you need a very good team of lawyers to
Mhm.
deal with
Right.
municipalities.
Yeah.
Otherwise, no.
Hey, Tim, what do you think
Justin,
on all of this?
I wanted to thank you for your presentation and bring out the points on a lot of the deals. I'm seeing also a lot of deals that previously, when you go through the deal flow, it was approved, but due to current political situation
Yeah.
or energy constraint, many of these deals are in limbo right now.
Right.
So really appreciate it. One of the things I wanted you to comment on is, there's news that just came out. NVIDIA announced a strategic partnership with, Blackstone and Apollo and also the other major financial arm, just basically trying to do a independent compute infrastructure financing platform. And I think that's the reason why, Taiwan has been such a big topic because Jensen has been going over to Taiwan to work with a lot of various different technology company. And I think that's why this infrastructure fund was formed. So I wanted to get ideas of, like what's your take on that and what are some of your comments? Because it seems like this is the future. We can't get away from it. It's good. Data center will be built, computing infrastructure will be built, right? So
Yeah, I think a couple comments on that. Like you said, it's the future. I would say it's here. We live in that world now. Someone like NVIDIA, is obviously the 800-pound gorilla in the room. And I think just looping back to some of what I said to Paula, development is inevitable. These data centers are ultimately going to be developed. I think the constraint now is, like I said, it's not so much on the law, it's on the timing right now, because you have a political issue that is trying to get ahead of the politics on it. But, ultimately we live in this world. Obviously these deals being done that you just highlighted, the data centers are coming. What the regulatory environment is going to look like is going to change for sure. So you have, and again, it's a 1-year permit freeze that was enacted in July. So it's not an open-ended moratorium. Open-ended moratoriums are legally extraordinarily difficult to upend. If there were any litigation over something that lasted longer than that, I can almost assure you it would come down. I'll just say the quiet part out loud, right? Money rules the roosts. Where the demand is, and where the business priorities lie, certainly with some of the larger players that you're talking about, it's going to get done. So the question is now the right time to pluck the dollars down? Not giving investment advice, but I wouldn't do it right now, right? But to the extent that there's other geopolitical concerns that aren't necessarily related just to real estate development things. This could, and you have an appetite for waiting, right? I think this would look like a very attractive sector, and I think that some of the deals and partnerships that you just highlighted are hoofbeats on the distance as to where that's going to turn into the physical opportunities for investments, certainly within our own market, because like I said, it is the future, but it's here. It is a reality, and these things are current and prospective needs. I think that's my take on what you highlighted.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Does anybody else have any questions? And actually, we have a Globinar that's starting with the Baltimore, Washington chapter in a few minutes. So actually, we probably need to really wrap up. So I'm wondering, both Justin and Tim, if you'd like to make some final comments, any closing comments. What should we be taking away from today?
I think I'd wrap it up just sort of how I wrapped it up with Ellen. It's politics moves first and then the law follows after. But ultimately, business drives, what ultimately the physical market or the built world responds to. We need the data centers. AI is like not going away. It's here. It's only going to get more in demand. There's two questions with AI. Is it profitable is one thing, but is it going to be used? That answer is not going to change. And, we have physical needs for the digital world. You need a good attorney to make sure that, you can get the best use out of your land, your project, to make sure your dollars are adequately protected with something that is it's coming. So I think, to the extent that, we're in the context of investment dollars. This is something that, it's a physical need for the digital world that will be regulated differently than it currently is, for sure. But there's not a lot out there, and there are investment opportunities, but it needs to be treated, carefully, because there's a lot of uncertainty in the market. I think that's ultimately what the takeaway is. But you solve and you hedge those risks with very familiar tools that are generally applicable in commercial real estate, generally, and make sure you got somebody that knows how to deal with that appropriately. I think that's my take.
Chime in real quick. I can't help but put my business development hat on. I saw it firsthand with Justin, and I guess it is my job to sell them as much as I can. But obviously, it's on the residential end. I hired Justin myself. I walked down the hall.
I am Tim's lawyer, by the way.
Yes, and you see firsthand, whether it's the municipal level or elsewhere, if you don't have someone who understands the nuance of these approvals and these licenses. And I saw it personally. People are getting shot down left or right because they didn't take the appropriate channels. Having a seasoned lawyer on your side to help you along the way. I know the financial investment is difficult, but having that person on your side makes all the difference if you want to get what you want. So I saw it firsthand. He did a great job, and I got what I wanted.
Thanks,
So,
Tim. I'll give you that. I'll give you the $20 later.
All right, great.
Timothy, I think for any deals, having a good lawyer on your side is very important because, along the way, you don't know. When everything goes smoothly, everything is good. But it's always when things go wrong, that's when you're like, oh, what's in that contract,
Yeah. And I live in the unsmooth world. That's
Yeah.
where I spend all my time. So yeah.
we live in the unkempt world and unruly world, and things happen. So thank you for sharing that, and thank you for today's conversation. Next week, Daniel Cheng is going to be talking about the work he's doing between China and the U.S. And so 30 seconds, Jim, any wrap up and anything about Daniel you'd like to say?
Well, one, I had to catch up with them. You got to show up on this one to learn, especially if you want to deal with China. And the big thing is he brought so much business to the Carolinas. Now he's bringing it to the U.S. So this is a must-show event if you want to learn and do business with China.
Amazing. Thanks, everybody. The next conversation is Baltimore, Washington, and it's helping small businesses get to the next level globally. So thanks, everybody, for taking the time today. See you next week, and see you anytime. Take care.
Thanks all.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.